Hi, so welcome back to Free Floating. Today we're going to do part two of the subject of nutrition, so does it really matter? And we're going to take a much deeper dive and look at a more practical, what do we eat and why are we making the choices that we do today. So welcome, Nina.
Hi Sarah, how's it going?
Good, thank you. A week passes really quickly.
It does fly by.
So I'm going to pass the question over to you. What do you have in your cupboards at home, food-wise, that are your staples? And the other part of the question is, what have you got rid of?
Yes. Well, for me now, I really do try and eat more sort of a balanced diet in terms of can I have the rainbow on my plate type thing. The more sort of colours I have, the more vitamins I feel like I intake. So for me, my go-to, I quite, especially when it's warm, I quite like something fresh and light. And so secret things I have in my cabinet would be, as a predominantly vegan, I definitely do love my nutritional yeast, and that's just something I use to top over that adds a bit of B12 because obviously I don't have that as much.
So is that the only place you get your B12?
Because I have it fairly often, yes. I did have a spray that I put underneath my tongue because I think with the soy, I mean, I do buy organic, but still, there's still, for vegans, they would say potentially B12, you want to make sure you intake in calcium. So
can I just understand what you're saying? So you use a B12 supplement, which
I used to, but now it's a fortified with B12, so it's not exactly from nature itself in a sense, but I find that it does give me that B12 fix. So and B12 is such a happy vitamin as well. I think we'll go on to that later when we're talking about macro and micro, but
do you feel the difference then?
So I do feel the difference. I don't feel like I have to have it every day because I think the body is also good at adapting. But like you said last time, sometimes you feel you need it and then I'll take more. And there's other times where it's okay. But I have at least every week. So it's fairly often, at least a good 2-3 times a week.
And nutritional yeast, you're just sprinkling over whatever you're eating, whether it's a salad or it could be over something hot.
Could be even made with cashews. So you can add like a cream cheese effect for sort of vegan food. And it can't be heated, so you can't heat it, otherwise B12 will die. That's one thing. So, but I do notice the difference. So I have that a lot. So I also roast a lot of nuts and seeds that I sprinkle on top of salads, and it's my favourite and that go-to. And I do believe sometimes your body, when you eat healthily, your body craves things that you need. But I love roasted sesame. So just dry roasted sesame, I don't add any oil or anything. I just roast the sesame, and that on top of a salad is just cherry on top of the icing.
Do you use tahini?
I do use tahini, but for the roasted sesame, I literally just use the sesame on its own. So just get raw sesame, or roast it using a pan, and then I pour that on top of a lot of things. But you can do other seeds as well. So you can do pumpkin, sunflower, just roasting those, and it just adds a little bit of vitamins and minerals to sort of your diet. And I noticed the difference. And sesame is really high in calcium, so I noticed that as well. Because if you don't have enough calcium in your body, it just takes it from your bones. And sometimes with our diet and the way we farm, we don't sometimes calcium. But yes. And what else? What else do I like to make a very substantial salads or substantial foods. I do a lot of lentils and pulses. For me, I think some people don't react always well to certain types of pulses. So for me, I can handle chickpeas and lentils till the sun goes down. But yeah, other beans are a little bit more difficult. The more you soak them in water and wash them, the more that sort of, sulfate kind of goes away, or sulfur, and the easier it is to digest. But still, some people I know have a problem. But for me, lentils and chickpeas are especially lentils, are my go-to. So I really like to add variation. So, you know, sun-dried tomatoes, olives, yeah, everything sort of I can add and make my dish a little bit more exciting. But what about you?
So I've always got coconut milk inside,
That's good.
nuts and seeds for sure. Um, Beans, my body likes white beans and kidney beans, not necessarily a whole range of beans. And pulses, I struggle with a little bit. So lentil-wise, lentils, for some reason, the brown ones are fine. Other lentils don't like me at
Mm.
all. But the
Just shows
bulk,
you need to test a bit, isn't it?
yeah,
Sometimes with foods.
all our bodies are different. I think we mentioned last week that we have
Yeah.
some ancestral heritage of our gut biome as well. So introducing things that weren't natural to our family may not be acceptable to our body the first or the second time, but maybe it's just weaning them in at some point. Our bodies change. But the majority of my food, if I'm honest, comes in a box every week from an organic farm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I buy a fruit and veg box. I'm not obsessive about what's in it. I can look online to find out, but it's a surprise. I get excited every Monday morning what's in there, and it's a question of what can I create with this. And often, you know, there are staples in there. There's always lemon and garlic, and there's always potatoes and onions, but you never know what's in it. Probably 60% is a surprise, but you get local, mainly local and seasonal. And I think there's a really important thing in the, I guess, the symbiosis of our body and natural food when it's still got energy because it's only been picked very recently. So it tastes different. And I think the way that I've started to eat the last 5-7 years is to eat less, but to eat good quality and better tasting food. So we're kind of, when we're really busy and, you know, we're running to the supermarket and buying processed food and trying to fit everything in our lives, we're not eating, savouring and actually nurturing the body. Whereas having a little bit more time, it means that you eat more consciously. And just crazy things like reducing the size of your plate, because I know maybe with a cereal, so I don't eat grains, but I do eat the organic, the paleo granola when it's rice and coconut and seeds and things. But there's a lot of calories in there, so I know that if I take a normal size portion, I'm going to regret it in an hour or two. So I've started putting my breakfast in a little ramekin, and it might not look like much, but actually that's enough, and the body says, I've had enough, I don't need any more. So adapting a little bit the size, maybe not eating with your eyes anymore and eating with the awareness of what your body requires as opposed to what you think you require makes a huge difference.
I think I used to follow this woman. She started this thing called Sharon, and it was more of a vegan. She believed in vegan, no oil, lifestyle. And she had some things like if you every day think about how many nuts you eat, and because in the environment in our ancestry time, nuts came in harder shells, and so we would never had a bag and just could sort of pop them in our mouth so easily. So it was about trying to eat 8 or 9, because that's probably per day as a max or as a sort of indicator. Because that's how much, like you said, your body needs.
Yeah, no, that's a good barometer actually. So I've got red currants growing in my garden at the moment, and they're ripe. And I went out to pick. Actually, I was picking greens this morning. My eye caught the red of the currants, and obviously that's the reason why nature gives us these bright foods, because it's an alertness that it's good for our body and we should be eating it. And I was eating them off the bush. And there was a point where I said, actually, I should just measure that in my hand, because I've probably had more than a handful already. And there is a tomorrow. So sometimes we get kind of pulled into the consumption as opposed to the thought behind what we're actually trying to do. And I've got some black currants that are bigger than my thumbnail. Last year, I probably got 2 weeks worth of black currants on that bush, so I'm watching them carefully. But again, the amount of vitamin C in any day, I know that our bodies can take far greater than the RDA, but yeah, to spread it out, to savour it a little bit longer is quite valuable.
Yeah.
So what else is in my cupboard? Always seaweed. So I'm quite obsessed with iodine, because so many people have iodine deficiencies and are completely unaware of, I guess, the limited range of foods that iodine's in. So I do the same with seaweed, as you do with nutritional yeast, which is I spread it on the top of everything. It looks pretty and it has the therapeutic benefits as
They've
well.
actually now done, now you can get a salt replacer, and that's basically made out of seaweed. And basically it's meant to add a bit of sodium to your food, but not, it's like 95% less than average salt.
Yeah, I've seen that, but actually using it like salt doesn't give you a big enough portion. So you're not, if you're using it like salt, you're not taking a teaspoon, which is on average the amount that you need every day.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I find that sometimes to just input some iodine is probably greater than most normal people would have on a daily basis as well. In case you also didn't want that sort of fishy taste of seaweed, because some people also don't like that as well.
Yeah. I've always got frozen berries in the freezer, and avocados if I can. And I don't take dairy very regularly, so I tend to use hazelnut milk quite a lot. So my treat might be cacao powder with hot hazelnut milk, and instead of a dessert, that just takes the sweetness of sweetness craving.
You can add a bit of cacao there if you want, and that gives you a bit of magnesium as well. So I've definitely, cacao dough was a go-to if I want a kick. And then I've got coconut sugar in case, I don't try and eat sugar at all, especially not refined, but if I want something sweet and I'm craving it, I've got that there in case I want to have a spoon. So that's a go-to as well. It's crazy how many go-tos there are when we start talking, and how many things people probably would be like, what is that? Also with iodine, I take a Brazil nut at least every other day, if not every day, if I remember.
It's a good idea for selenium.
Yeah, exactly, which also helps with sort of metabolism and sort of converting sort of iodine, isn't it?
It's an essential part of iodine, but zinc is too.
And I noticed the difference with that, actually.
Say that again.
I noticed the difference as well.
Yeah, and I guess so. You're a vegan.
So I'm vegan, but I do have the odd times have wild fish and organic free range egg. So not completely vegan.
So it was the fish I was just about to just about to mention in terms of the omegas. So in my organic box, I tend to have 2 portions of wild fish a week and 2 portions of liver a week, because my B12 is coming from liver, with organs being one of the most densely nutritious foods. I eat chicken if I'm in a restaurant, but I try to avoid it if I can. And I've never really been a big red meat eater, although on a special occasion I wouldn't turn down a chili, but they're not things that I have in the home. So I don't buy those. On a special occasion, I'm not being too squeamish. But I'd say that the majority of my diet is frugivore, so fruit-based. I could live out of the fruit bowl if there was nothing else. Greens are really important for me, and a whole range of other vegetables for sure. But my natural go-to is always something out of the fruit bowl.
I've got to say, I do love a good, so starting off the day, or if I've had a bit of a fast, let's say, 5-6 hours since the last meal or more, half a grapefruit is honestly great. And I do actually notice that actually helps sort of my digestion as well. But I also love grapefruit, so I like anything citrusy. And there's a lot of vitamin C actually in citrus as fruits. So
so grapefruit is a go-to for me quite often on a salad, maybe with a bit of fish, which actually cuts away the oil as well. So that combination is quite nice. So we talked a little bit about supplements. So my point of view about supplements is if you can get the nutrient from food, that's your best source. But there are certain maybe times of the year or certain supplements that aren't available from our food choices. So we talked, I think, about vitamin D on the last podcast. So vitamin D, I tend to take in a liquid form with K2 in the winter, for the 6 months of the winter. I also have iodine in a liquid form as well. So if I run out of seaweed, I've always got an iodine source there. But apart from those two, I tend not to supplement anything else.
Mm.
So you've mentioned B12 for sure, which is essential for.
And I try, like you
eaters.
said, to take everything. So that's why I try and do the calcium from the sesame seeds. It's just, again, I think when you think about taking vitamins from your diet, it's just about having a varied diet. And I think that's really important, because it's so easy in a day to skip on those if you're eating pasta or like frozen veg. So yeah, and yeah, I think that's generally the main one I would take at the moment, just because sometimes I can suffer from high cortisol just for the last few years, and that can be detrimental to your body and your adrenals. I take like mushroom mix, so herbal mushrooms, which are like lion's gate and chaga. You might have heard them with coffee.
Yeah.
A lot of people put them with coffee, and I actually really noticed that, really, especially if you're feeling a little bit stressed, or if you've had a few days where you're running around. Even it's not just maybe mental stress, it's also physical stress. I find those help me out. So adaptogenic sort of herbs, and that's really good for someone like me, because I suffer from PCOS sometimes, so that's sort of it makes my insulin high and my cortisol high, and that the adaptogenic herbs just really help bring those down. Ashwagandha is another good one. So I'm really, if you're living in a high stressful situation, or you're feeling stress, I feel like adaptogenic herbs are definitely great things to put in your sort of weekly, and they're not too much as well if you get them in bulk.
So I tend to have chaga, for instance, as a dried mix to make a tea. Very, 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 very earthy.
Yeah, very earthy it is. But if you, for example, sometimes I mix it with a decaf coffee, and actually that, or you could even mix it with was it not burdock, but they used to do this kind of coffee replacement, and it was made out of, was it
dandelion?
Dandelion, that was it. Yeah. And actually I quite liked it. I mean, you could easily have that with a bit of coconut milk, and it's quite nice. Yeah. I do turmeric is one of my go-tos as well. I love a good turmeric latte, mix it with a bit of ginger, a bit of cayenne, a bit of black pepper. I really like that with milk, but again, it's quite spicy. So I think spices are also kind of essential in the cabinet, because they add like such an auric power. So it's like the antioxidant power of spices are just insane. So I try and always add them to my meals, even just if you've got dried coriander or dried parsley, and put that on top of a salad if you wanted that extra spice. It's so much. So I think it's really good for you as well, for just, it's probably anti-inflammatory and just pushing your antioxidant power.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I had a holiday in Morocco and spent half of it in the spice markets. So we must have gone 4 times, and I probably brought back 6 or 7 kilos of different spices. It was so exciting. Saffron particularly, because saffron's expensive over here, but has amazing anti-anxiety, anti-depressive qualities, just a couple of strands. And actually we have crocuses growing in the garden for a month or 2 in spring. So there's lots of things that we could incorporate if we just created the time and the headspace to do that. And turmeric I buy as a root with ginger weekly. My organic source tends to source those quite regularly. So very warming, very, on every level actually, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, you name it. If there was only one food that I could eat for the rest of my life, from a taste choice, it would be black currants, but actually from a therapeutic choice, it would be turmeric.
Yeah.
Actually, in the Amazon, they gave us turmeric juice with fresh lime juice every day as a prophylactic for malaria, and we were all bitten to bits, and none of us had any long-standing reactions to them. Whereas in the UK, I'd react really badly. I'd probably get quite swollen and irritable, but actually turmeric and lime is in native people's mind the solution for malaria. So there's a lot we can still learn.
Just shows the medicinal properties of nature. So we just need to just be more aware of them. And I think there's so much in nature we just don't know about. And then when we start again, researching, we realize there's so much at our doorstep that can help our body fight inflammation, fight infection, fight disease.
I don't think most people realize that all medicines actually originate from nature. So chemists, pharmaceutical companies went round the world in the 1800s, getting all of these secrets from local Aboriginal people and then creating a chemical version of it. But the bit that's interesting for me is our bodies, our cells, receive nature and know what to do with it. So when we put something in our body that isn't natural, that's a chemical, our body reacts in a completely different way, not taking it into the cell. And this is part of the problem, I think, with vaccines at the moment, when we have alien chemicals and molecules in our body, the body doesn't react in a positive way. So wherever possible, and from a very early age, my reaction has always been try and take a naturopathic route as opposed to taking a pharmaceutical route. So I'd rather take birch from the tree, which comes through tinctures and things that you can buy naturally, rather than an aspirin, which is essentially the chemical component of birch.
I guess I think if the hard part nowadays is I've had to do a lot of research in which ones are actually good, and I think that's the hard part, is knowing what's reputable, even for vitamins and minerals and things you get online or in store that are herbal of origin. But yeah, I think it's about knowing where to go and how to take them, and because at the end of the day they are medicinal even from nature. So something that isn't intended for us, or it's not what our body needs, can also react badly. So I think it's really important for the knowledge there, and maybe below this sort of podcast we could put a few things like your box that you use from England. I could put some things that I get my nuts from that I know that are reputable, because I think that's one thing I found really hard, and it took me a long time because the web is just got so much, and obviously everyone's trying to sell something in a sense, and some people are really doing it the right way, and it's just about knowing the more sustainable, the ethical, and the more true source of a herb. Because I find even when you get vitamins, there's so many additives to the actual herbal, and I found that really surprising when I first started embarking on this sort of spice medicinal journey.
Yeah, very, very valid points. I think if we accept that most supplements are created to make money, so they're manufactured for a profit and quite often associated to the same companies that are creating the other medicines. And when you don't really know what's in it, so what you get in a lemon or in a lime, it's quite consistent. You don't actually know all the bulking agents and what's holding the caking agents and all the things that are holding tablets together. And I know that there's a lot of research into multivitamins that they're not really worth the value of the medicine, the majority of them, because there's such a small amount of each vitamin in it that the body doesn't receive. By the time it's digested it hasn't actually received much of a benefit. So you're right that it would be helpful to put some links of our reliable sources in there. Yeah. And it may mean spending a little bit more money, but for me that money is worthwhile if it's going to have an effect.
Yeah, and rather spend a couple of pounds more in something and actually get something that's actually real and good for you. I'm completely with you as well, and that isn't as in packaged form as normally a lot of the fruits and veg and vitamins are. So yeah, and also I found weird with multivitamins isn't I'm sure you know a lot more than I do in this, but I know, for example, some vitamins block other vitamins from absorption, and some different types, more cheaper variants of vitamin are less bioabsorbed by the body. So again, it's this, okay, it says it has it in, but what do you absorb? And that's another question.
Yes, so it's quite a broad question. I think it depends on the particular vitamin, because some need others to be carriers to help that absorption as well, like vitamin K, for instance. So yeah, it's. I think that the advice there really is for people to take an individual approach on their own situation, and find the right answer for them. Yeah. So
last thing to move on, just a very thing that I find really important is I take a probiotic as well, and that's because I can suffer sometimes from gut impermeability. So I take I take a probiotic, which is a vegan one, which is a kefir sort of probiotic, and I have like a shot of that 20 minutes before food in the morning when I've fasted overnight. And I find that really helps me. And I do this thing where I don't take it every day because I think the body can get used to things. So I do like, let's say 4 or 5 days in a row, and then I have 3 or 4 days of break, and then I kind of do it like that. But I've noticed a real difference in that. So that's one thing I'd also say is a bit of a staple.
So does your body tell you when it requires that?
Yeah, normally I feel like I'll wake up and I know when to take it. Sometimes I also just forget as being normal human being, but yeah, so I get these ones that give you a shot so you know how much to take, and then I kind of go, okay, I'll take this, and when I feel I need it, and I feel if I'm feeling a little bit of stomach pain, I'll probably take it the next day, and generally it's really good. Another really good one, and this is only because I suffer more from gut issues, is L-glutamine. I find really, really useful as well, and I take that. It's an amino acid, so it's protein, but it's also helps majority of the lining of the stomach. So I also take that either after exercise and before food, and I find that, again, I don't take it all the time, take it every now and again, and I find that really helpful for gut as well.
So do you think that not eating meat, there's possibly a requirement for vegans, vegetarians for L-glutamine? Because normally it would be included within other protein substances.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't take a probiotic, but I eat sauerkraut, drink kombucha. So I'm doing a similar kind of thing, and my gut health is much better than it's been pre fermented vegetables. It's quite interesting. A lot of what we're doing is what our ancestors used to do, or what our grandparents used to do. You know, you look in certain parts of the world, I think Bavaria, you know, Germany and Austria, for instance, they've always had pickled vegetables in their diet. It was a way of preserving things for a period of time.
Yeah.
Before fridges and freezers.
So yeah, that was my little addition. But yeah, it's crazy all the little things you don't realise you intake, and when you explain it, you're like, actually I do all these things, but they just come naturally to me now to do. So they're not like something I have to think about. And I think, again, sometimes it can be daunting for anyone, you know, who goes, I've not even started any of these things. But I think it's mainly about just trying to add one thing at a time and then just taking it from there.
That's brilliant advice, because it can be quite overwhelming for people when they start out on the journey. For instance, people wanting to give up gluten, and there are a lot more people that have reactions to gluten than you would believe. It's helped all sorts of things like arthritis, as well as brain fog and gut issues. So when you say to give up gluten, people don't realise that most processed foods, sauces, gravy, or there's gluten in everything. It's a real contaminant. So if you're not eating, creating food from natural sources, you know, knowing what goes into everything, there's a good chance you've not completely cut out gluten. And it can be quite frustrating if you do have a particular issue and it doesn't get resolved just because you're giving up pasta and bread, for instance. You have to delve a little bit deeper. But my experience, and that experience of people that I work with, is it's always worthwhile. And actually the one that gets a lot of people is beer, because we just don't imagine, you know, there's a gluten source in beer, but of course.
Yeah. And I think like you said also last time, it's not even just about trying to remove gluten from your diet, but it's also that a lot of the ones in the normal shelves of Sainsbury's and Tesco's are actually also bad for you. So it's also about knowing what gluten to replace, because what's labeled as gluten-free cannot always be healthier in another respect. Very high in corn, GMO. So yeah, that it is a bit of a journey, and I think that's what also to consider, is that it's okay that it might take a little bit longer, but we process one thing at a time. We don't have to be successful. I remember when I started making gluten-free desserts, and it was really, really terrible, very unsuccessful. But then I just kept trying, and I kept and they got lots better. Now I can cook very well, but it did take me a bit of time.
There's a bit of alchemy with white flour, eggs and sugar. things
Yeah.
raise, things look nice as a result of
Yeah.
cooking.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. You can't expect your first experience of cooking without those to actually be perfect. But actually, sometimes it's about the taste. And, you know, we've been so obsessed with things looking perfect. What does it matter?
Yeah.
So some of the fruit I get in the organic box is really misshapen, and it just makes me smile because I'd never find that in the supermarket. But it
Mm.
tastes perfect. It tastes better than a fully perfectly formed carrot if I've got a little wizen one or a huge, massive thing that they would never sell. So I think we just have to change our expectations a little bit and use our common sense and our taste buds.
Maybe next podcast you could show a few of your random veg.
Deal. I could get into the fridge now if you're interested.
Oh,
So,
it
so
is interesting.
the good thing about this box is that I eat things that I wouldn't ordinarily have eaten. So last week I was sent this huge orange pumpkin, and my recollection of eating pumpkin has been a really bad one. Butternut squash I'll eat, but these funny orange pumpkins, I'd never have touched it. But I
Yeah.
roasted it, and it was the most delicious thing. Put some cinnamon on it, and it tasted delicious. And it was actually a bit like a dessert. So that was my sugary carbs for the day. I didn't need anything else. So I'm grateful for the surprise that comes on a weekly basis.
Yeah, sometimes I try and make chocolate puddings with either squash or pumpkin. I just sort of throw that with a blender with maybe, like you said, a table nut of nut butter, some coconut milk, and maybe cacao. And it's really great, to be honest.
Yeah. I think just being a little bit creative and searching around to find recipes that give you the same satisfaction as you would, or you think that you have. I bought a chocolate trifle for my son last week, and I was really tempted to have a spoonful of it. But within one half a spoonful, it was just so heavy, and I could feel the grease and my stomach didn't like it at all. So there are so many things within our repertoire now that have become staples. Using avocado and cacao
Yeah.
is a really lovely combination.
Decadent.
Absolutely. Yeah, rich and creamy. Yeah, we don't need the dairy in there.
I used to
So
make things for my chocolate cake with avocado and dates
nice.
and a
Yeah.
bit of cacao. That was great. People couldn't believe it.
Yeah, we have an expectation of what it's going to taste like, and it never is. It's always something much better, much greater.
Well, I must say, kids never liked my stuff, so I think it's again about having a palate for it and not having sugar all the time.
But yeah, sometimes it's not telling them what's in it. So I have a lovely beetroot and cacao cake, and if you don't tell people that there's beetroot in it, it's just a chocolate cake. Once their mind knows that there's a hidden vegetable in it,
they almost just persuade themselves they don't like it. I've seen that, where there's like, oh, I'm not going to like it now.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that kind of moves on a little bit to the psychology of food. So food is supposed to be fun. And I really appreciate that you can get a little bit anal about this, that you can start making judgments about what you should and shouldn't be eating, particularly when you're with a group of friends, or when somebody tells you that they're on a diet and then you see them walking through the park with an ice cream. So we are humans at the end of the day. So what is your measure? How do you balance eating well with eating for fun and enjoyable?
Yeah, I found in the beginning this one very hard because I actually felt that people judge you quite a lot, like as if almost you're judging them for eating a pizza and you don't want to eat a pizza. And I felt really like that, but I was like, oh, I don't mind if at the end of the day, everyone's the owner of their own vehicle, so you can eat what you want to eat, and unless people ask me, about food and that they're feeling pain or inflammation, and I might explain further, but I tend not to give advice where people don't ask, because I don't want anyone to have to make yourself feel bad about what you eat. So I found this a struggle because I found that I wasn't saying anything, but people would always be like, oh, why do you have to, I always felt a bit fussy. But then I think it's just because I became a lot more aware, and like you said, I just know that whenever I'd eat something more greasy or something that was supposed to be healthy, but I just knew that wasn't, I'd end up always feeling awful the next couple of hours, and why put yourself through that if just to sort of save face, as they would say. So I think it involves you being knowing your boundaries, and just believing in your own health and your own body, and just, I think, just standing up for yourself. So I think when I'd go out, I'd probably, I don't drink that much at all for the last maybe 3-4 years. I just, yeah, I got over it really. Actually, I don't have wine or anything like that, because I found that wine and the sulfates really irritated my stomach, and sulfate-free wine's not very tasty. So but what I do is sometimes, if I'd really feel like, I think like you said about the 80 to 20%, sometimes if I felt like, I wouldn't mind a shot of, let's say, a spirit like gin, I'd probably have a shot of gin and I'd fill it up with soda water, so just sparkling water, and then I'd have some lime, and to be honest, and maybe mint, and I really, to be honest, I feel it tasted great. So I think if I ever wanted to have leeway, I'd probably do something like that, add sparkling water to a spirit, and then add like lime. And again, like I said, I was lucky. I've always liked sour and citrus fruits, so I don't like sweet drinks and stuff like that anyway, so I was always lucky. And then in terms of food, I think, luckily now we're in a place where a lot more people have digestive issues or have more varying diets, and so a lot more, restaurants are catered a little bit more towards that. And so I just kind of know what I can eat and know what I can order. But yeah, sometimes this is a bit interesting. You'd order something from a restaurant that you could probably make much better yourself. So yeah.
Sometimes it's not about the food, is it? Sometimes it's just being with the company and enjoying that. Yeah, I try to make the experience not uncomfortable for other people, which means that my boundaries are quite flexible on certain occasions. Father's Day, for instance, a couple of days ago. Yeah, I took the desserts and I knew I wasn't going to eat the sugary pastry things that I'd taken, but I knew everybody else wanted to. I just prepare and make sure that I've got something as an alternative. But if I decided I did want to, it was fine. I mean, on occasions, it's really nice to indulge and have something. Yeah. But invariably, my body tells me, thanks, that was enough. You don't need to do that for another year now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's important, again, to just let, like we said, your hair down a bit sometimes, and also just enjoy life. Otherwise it can become obsessive, and then it can, come with, like we said last time, guilt and shame and all this stuff, which shouldn't happen, because at the end of the day, we're actually we're creating this lifestyles for ourselves, to feel better, to be less stressed, and to move better, and to be healthier in our mind and our body. So it would be counterintuitive.
Yeah, there's a really interesting thing. I was reading The Psychology of Dieting, and if you have a meal and 4 people around the table, all 4 people are looking at that meal in a different way. So imagine it was salad with chicken and pasta. So you'd have the athlete that's trying to build strength, looking at the carbs and thinking, I really am going to eat the pasta first, and I'm probably not going to indulge in the salad because I know that I need my protein. So the thing that they would leave is probably a thing that the next person who's really looking after their weight is eating the salad and the chicken and leaving the pasta, where you might have a scientist next to them that's looking at it from a chemical point of view and how it's interacting with the body. And all of them will digest differently, because their brain and their limbic system, their reaction, their digestive system is reacting to the thought when it's consumed. And I know that if I'm eating something that I think I shouldn't eat, I don't digest it very well. If I'm embracing it and saying that this is the best chocolate profiterole I've ever had, and I only want 1 or 2, I don't need 10, it is a completely different scenario than doing it on the sly, and then thinking, if you're thinking to yourself that I've got to run 12 miles tomorrow rather than my normal 3. So our mind really controls our digestive system as well. So sometimes give ourselves a little bit of slack, but also be aware that if you are overindulging, you will reap the benefits of that, because you're going to have to do a little bit more to exercise it off or digest it better.
Yeah, no, totally. I think the last real point maybe we could talk about is just, what is preservatives, what's organic, and We mentioned about, your organic boxes, but what does that really mean? Why do we want to avoid preservatives?
Well, yeah. So I eat organic because my awareness of the nutrient quality of the soil in growing non-organic. I think 20, 30 years ago, most conventional growing of food uses pesticides and herbicides, which actually are created to implode the gut of insects to avoid I think primarily to avoid the destruction of the crops in the beginning. But there are all sorts of other behaviours, and I'm a bit squeamish about eating oats because a lot of the grains are harvested before that they're actually ripe, and they're sprayed with chemicals to dry them. That is a completely unnatural thing for our bodies. And if you look at the increase of autoimmune diseases and gut problems over the last 30 years, and obesity, diabetes, something is going on in our food chain that our body isn't used to eating. And then you can look at all the learning difficulties and challenges that children have when they're eating a very conventional processed food diet. So my choice was really, I wanted to give my body the best nutrition as possible. It's more expensive, so I eat less of it. And within a first week, just the taste of organic food compared to the conventional food, you can taste the difference in most things. So I'm putting pure nutrition into my body. I'm not fooling myself that it's 100% better, but it's for sure much less harmful than when you're buying the non-organic. So what's your point of view?
Oh, I completely am with you 100%. Couldn't have said it best for myself. I mean, I noticed completely different in my skin, just my overall health when I started eating organic. And yeah, and I think a lot of people, stray from organic as well because it's a little bit more dirty. We have to wash a bit more because obviously it's coming more from the soil. And I think that, we can get over that, dirt doesn't necessarily mean bad for you. And I think there's this parallel, and maybe that we do another podcast on that at some stage, because I think a lot of people are almost too obsessed with cleaning products, and that is killing our gut microbiome, like we said last time, so our gut diversity. So I think all these things are actually better, but again, it's how we view them and what perspectives we take on that. So I'm completely with you on organic.
So it's interesting you talk about cleaning, because I don't clean my fruit and veg, because I know that in the soil, the bacteria and the microbes that grow on a tomato or on a potato are hugely beneficial for us. So if I'm buying it conventional from the supermarket, it's been sitting in plastic, for sure, I'm washing that. Yeah. But if it's coming in an organic cardboard box, there's very little packaging in these boxes. I know it's been touched by other people, but the other people are picking it out of the ground and putting it in the box. I think that I know that our gut needs the microbes, the natural microbes that come from the dirt.
Yeah, no, I do the same. And a lot of people are like, oh no, you're going to get sick. And yeah, again, I think the conventional view is that's worse for you. So I think it's about, again, creating more awareness about where your food comes from and when it's good maybe to clean, when it's not. And yeah, I think definitely that should be another little title, because I find that a lot of people are really almost glued to their cleaning products. And I think, I'm not saying it's in bad things, because obviously, for hospitals and things like that, you need a clean environment, an uninfected environment. But, in other things, I think it's also important to, let how we say kids play with the dirt, and just allow your microbes a little bit of time to diversify and, and turn heal.
Yeah, so your sound's going a little bit weird now, so it's probably a good opportunity to bring the conversation to a close. So always lots on this conversation for sure. So I hope that's been helpful to somebody out there. And it sounds like there's going to be a part 3 that's going to talk a little bit more about the chemicals that are in our environment. So beyond just our food, but what else are we bringing into our bodies as a result of having it around our house? So that could be clothes, cleaning products. Well,
Yeah.
we can go to
Moisturizers.
the whole area of cosmetics.
Well, I mean, I think it's massive umbrella, and I think yeah, I think maybe just touching on again that skin is another food source of the body, and then maybe whatever we put on that, we should equally be able to put in our mouths.
And then you're going to get me onto the topic of tattoos, which is and hair dye. So all the things that we're really unconscious about that we're doing to our bodies, our hair and our skin, without being over alarmist, I think we just should be aware that for everything that we're bringing into our body that our body has to work hard to eliminate, we need to offset that with something positive. So my argument is that the organic, nutritious food is offsetting the stuff that I might put on my body, for sure. I have my hair dyed, but if I'm eating organically, my body should be able to expel all the toxins from the hair.
Yeah, and again, I think it's the 80-20 thing. I think it's not over obsession, but it's just about knowing, being aware, and trying to predominantly have a sort of healthier lifestyle.
So I've just got to add this because it was funny. I was on my run this morning and there was a guy at the bus stop and he had his face mask over his nose so he could smoke. So totally unaware that the body requires oxygen as air, and his breathing in of his cigarette fumes is probably 1,000 times more lethal than breathing natural air. It just seemed quite bizarre.
Yeah, that's what I mean by what we think is all right and what we don't, and actually maybe there's a grey area there.
Yeah, and who to trust for that information, for sure.
Exactly.
It needs a bit of research. Anyway, yeah. Nice to chat, Nina.
Sarah, have an amazing day. We'll see you all next week.
Okay, bye all.